This is Soccer 101 with Moon and Rocchio.
Welcome back to Soccer 101. I'm Moon. That's Matt. Rocchio. Rocchio, how are you, dude?
I'm doing great, Moon. How you been?
I've been okay, man. A lot of shows, a lot of catching up on League's Cup matches, and just trying to keep up with St. Louis City SC. It's been a heck of a summer already.
Yeah.
Let's just go chronologically today, and we'll start with the Tim Parker news. A lot of people, I think, were pretty surprised when that was going around. I saw a lot of social media like, I can't believe it. Oh my gosh, thank you, Tim Parker. But why are we getting rid of Tim Parker? Blah blah blah. Let's just catch everybody up. Saturday, August 3rd, is when the news really broke that Tim Parker and $600,000 in 2025 general allocation money is going to New England Revolution in exchange for defender Henry Kessler. City retains half of Kessler's 2024 club salary budget charge. Now, we didn't see either of those guys really in the last month because they were both cup-tied, so they were not able to play in League's Cup matches. So you'll see probably both of them here as MLS picks back up. But what do you think? What was your initial reaction there?
I mean, considering you got a younger defender in the trade, it just made a lot of sense. And obviously, when you see the reporting that they were far away in the discussions for an extension, then obviously since then we've also gotten Tim Parker's appearance on a podcast where he kind of broke down his side of the story.
I'm willing to take less money to stay here, and you guys aren't even like giving me years on my contract. You're giving me a 1-year deal.
Because this is a business, right? And you know that as well as anybody else. Is that just basically what it came down to at the end of the day, and it's sort of like no hard feelings?
That's what I would say. I would say it definitely feels like a business decision. It just doesn't feel, I guess it just doesn't feel right because they just were never honest with me about the decision.
Mm-hmm.
Because they basically sent me one last offer like the weekend before I got traded. And that's when I told them, I was like, guys, it's okay. Like, we're not really close. Like, if you guys want to get a little closer, that's fine. If not, I'll be a free agent. And then Thursday morning, I walk into the gym and they're like, hey, Tim, Lutz and Hack want to talk to you. And I was like, oh, shit.
You knew exactly. You've had this conversation before.
Yeah. And then that's how I found out about this.
So that right there, Moon, that's the audio from Tim Parker on the podcast. And you heard it right there. He didn't like City's offer. They came to him late, and he finally just said, hey, listen, let's just talk about this in the offseason. There's no need for you guys to keep kind of giving me these offers. And the timing for him seems a little suspect because the next time he walks into the building, as you heard him break down there, he gets called into the meeting and they said, hey, listen, we traded you. And so it's not the most positive situation when you hear a guy like Tim Parker, who's so connected to the history of this team, then come out after the fact and have a not very positive and what some would say negative take on what went down with his contract discussions and eventual trade. That's the negative side of it, but it is a business. This is how these things are going to go. It's never going to be a pretty situation when a player's leaving, or it's rarely going to be a pretty situation when a player's leaving, because it's funny, we're going to talk about a much more amicable split with Anthony Markanich later on in the show. So it didn't surprise me that they made the move, but I am kind of sad that the move and everything around Tim Parker has kind of been marred by what comes down to I think, kind of common miscommunication between players and teams when they're a little bit older and they're trying to argue for that one more contract. I just see it as a business move, both on City's side and on Tim's side. I don't think anyone's the bad guy here, but it definitely wasn't a good look for anybody either.
Yeah, I agree with you, but you know, it is what it is. It's a fresh team. It's a new team. Yeah, maybe some of these guys have been involved in a lot of different things, but there's not a lot of history there to see exactly how negotiations will go. It didn't work out in Parker's favor as far as he's as far as he's concerned. But you got to get something for him if you can't get something from him. And I just have to say, man, the last couple of months, I just haven't seen it. And in the defense, we've
talked about it. We know.
We needed more out of him, and hey, we're getting a center back now. We're getting a center back from New England who's dead last in the East. Total garbage.
Yeah, and listen, if you look at Kessler's numbers, they aren't actually that much better than Tim Parker. The one thing that he's better at is, while his clearance and his passing numbers aren't as good, his block shots numbers are really good, and the fact that he's just younger and when you watch it seems like he can cover ground a little bit better than Parker. Those aspects make me think that it might not be a huge difference in between, making this trade, but I do think in the long run it's a better move for City.
I 100% agree, and here's the thing, man. Maybe it's a little bit younger. Even if it was an identical player, I still think you're getting a little bit of hope out of this scenario because, dude, listen, New England is where they are. They need to change anything up, and you change, what you can. And to them, it's probably a good deal, and to us, hopefully, it's a good deal as well. I think Parker's probably the only one that's looking at this as not in favor to him, and maybe it's not in his eyes, and that's totally fair. But the defense has been lacking.
Getting, like you said, just getting a player for a guy going out on an expiring contract is always a smart move.
You got to get something.
Another common Lutz W there.
Totally. You got to get something. It's actually very good business. And here's the other idea with bringing in somebody this younger. He went in the super draft, I believe, in 2020. So fresh, moldable. Maybe we'll see the system better. And listen, when you're looking at a veteran guy like Parker, and he's not a superstar. You're looking for maybe he doesn't have the pace, maybe he doesn't have this, but what he does have is as a veteran player is maybe that ability to really fashion cohesiveness or some, I don't want to even say inspiration, but some effect on younger players, learning a system and trying to be solid to help your offense, to help your team get some wins. And the biggest difference that we've been talking about this season to last season is just a couple goals. And I don't mean the defense has let us down by making a mistake and a couple goals has cost us points. I mean 6 to 7 mistakes per game equaling a goal that end up making the goal difference what it is, which isn't that bad. Listen, I'm looking at the goal difference right now. Right now, St. Louis sits in 13th in the West. Our goal difference is -14. It is only a 5-goal difference as far as goal difference between us and Austin, who's 10th. So what I'm saying is just 5 goals. 5 less goals that would have gone in from defensive mistakes. And I could probably count 3 times that from flat out half a dozen defensive mistakes equaling 1 goal each, would put us in a completely different scenario in the West. So something had to change in the West. And what are you going to change? You're going to change the guy that you need to get something for in the very near future that's obviously older than what you're going to get for him and probably isn't going to be as malleable into a system going forward. So I think what we did is a good deal, and we got some hope out of it. So we'll see. We'll see what happens now that the League's Cup is gone. So that brings us. That happened on the 3rd, and it's a big deal. I think it's a big deal that we'll really notice, coming up in the next couple weeks, hopefully, because the defense I think is really what we've been worried about mostly this summer.
We can't stop talking about it. We just and it's not our fault. It's not our fault.
We've made all these changes in the midfield and in the offense, and of course we have injuries. But with all that kind of stuff, if we just had a more solid defense that really played a better defense, and I've had a couple people reach out to me and say, "Well, what do you want? This guy got beat by this guy." And when I'm talking about a better defense from this team, I'm not talking about actual defending. I'm not talking about
I am. I'm talking about actual defending.
I am not saying defense when it comes to a defender defending an attacker with a ball. I'm not saying play after play after play, although some of those have been pretty rough to watch. I'm saying a defensive mindset as a whole. You're supposed to be, there's a cohesion between individuals and a collective that's really supposed to be looking out and constantly thinking, playing defensively. And what I mean by thinking and playing defensively is you are constantly looking at, okay, what are the next 2 to 3 possible moves for the opposition, and how do I ruin it? How do I flatten somebody? How do I flatten this other team? And what I mean, when people hear somebody say oh, this team's looking flat, or you want to flatten the opposition, I'm not talking about flatten as in physically put them into the ground. I'm saying flatten as you want to deflate. You want to deflate the options. You want to deflate the energy. You want to deflate the creativity from an opposition, and you do that from a defensive mindset that, again, is coming from individuals and a collective that takes some time and chemistry and a lot of talent to ruin opportunities for creativity from your opposition. And that's what we've been missing, on top of the just total individual gaffes that have been responsible for some really embarrassing opportunities. And thank goodness we have a world-class goalie, but he can't do it all, as we've seen, and as we find ourselves 13th place in the West. How do you feel about my take as far as it goes?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I mean, you can start a sentence with, I think City's defense needs to improve in this way, and no matter how you finish that sentence, I'm probably going to agree with you, because it's still, I think, the most important thing going forward, especially when you take into account everything we've seen with the new additions that we have been able to see so far from the Leagues Cup. Everything for me comes down to whether or not City can stabilize the defense and put out a consistent effort for 90 minutes, where you alluded to it, where it's not just game in and game out of 6 or 7 huge obvious mistakes that eventually doom you.
Yeah, speaking of defense, that same weekend, City added German defender Jonas Horn, pending the receipt of his P1 visa, on loan from FC Nuremberg. So, they're strengthening the defense. But what I would like to see, again, is, of course, individuals stepping up. But I would like to see some sort of coaching or understanding and a raised level of soccer IQ when it comes to the defense. Basically just deflating and flattening the opposition from the other teams before things happen. Really kind of being clairvoyant and seeing what the opportunities are and cutting those opportunities off. And what we saw in the Leagues Cup with Club America, and we'll get into that match now, it was a 4-2 loss. Really, it was a 3-2 loss. They had an empty netter, which, again, was another defensive gaffe, because you got two guys that all you got to do is get a touch on the ball, and this guy's not going to control it. Berkey comes all the way back, makes, 2 efforts to get to this, but your 2 defenders are what? I mean, God dang. Anyways, what you're going to see is when you're watching the Mexican club, one of the top North American teams, who doesn't have the greatest of defenses, but they have a better.
But they got some wingers.
Yeah, but and they have a better cohesive understanding of how to not allow such obvious opportunities to happen in their back quarter, and that was the difference. And ultimately, that was a game that could have and maybe even should have been won if you look at certain minutes from St. Louis.
I don't know. Listen, it was a positive game to take away from the Leagues Cup. But I'm not about to walk around here like there's any delusions that I didn't watch the 20 minutes after City scored their second goal with the inevitable horror that Club America was going to tie that game up and then eventually take the lead. It felt about the most. It was the most obvious thing that was going to happen. It's just the defense isn't good enough to slow down teams consistently. Yeah. And specifically, if you get a team whose left wing is able to move the ball as consistently as Club America was against Thomas Totland, it's game over for City. They're not going to beat a team if they're able to open up their offensive left side as often as Club America was. There's no way that City can make up for that, because to get any sort of offense, their fullbacks have to play higher. So if you get good wings right there like that can consistently over and over and over again make life hell for Totland, I don't know how City wins those games. And right now I don't think they really have a way to. And so that's one of the ways to beat them. And I think you saw that with Club America, and eventually just the dam just kept kind of getting pressed against, and finally it broke open. It was a great game. Yeah, a lot of great things to take from it, but I really don't think it was as close as even the 3-2 scoreline late in the game indicates.
I know what you're saying, man. I know what you're saying. But the reason that they kept pushing where they did is because they knew there was such a weakness there.
That's what I'm saying. But again, it's not their spaces are always going to be open. You're always making a trade-off in this game. And City needs to figure out a way that when a team has a left wing that can beat Thomas Totland, and listen, there's not a lot of teams that do. I would argue that there's maybe 2 or 3 MLS teams total that have that consistently, and that might be a problem in the playoffs. If you can make it to the playoffs, it might be a problem in game 6 of this 9-game stretch to close out the regular season, if I'm remembering the schedule off the top of my head well enough. So it's a problem, but I mean, it's not that large of an issue, and that's why, again, I'm not harping on the loss part of the Club America game, because it was a better game. And for the most part, the big holes that kept opening up in the middle of the field defensively, they were not as apparent as they were in the regular season, even under John Hackworth, when they were losing 4-1 back-to-back games prior to the League's Cup break. The defense looks better. There's no doubt about that. But now we have to wonder how everything's going to look when you have 1 or 2 new players on the back four, which could be the case, if not this weekend, then next weekend, as they look to finally incorporate Kessler and Horn.
I totally agree with you. The defense did look better, and I do think it was a very, very positive game. The only negative was, oh man, we could have had it. Nukvi
missing a sitter is not ideal.
That was so hard to watch. So hard. It was even harder to rewatch. I watched it 2 or 3 times, and it just hurts so badly. You can't miss opportunities like that.
And you feel for Thor too, because he's been playing better, and he obviously he keeps getting himself in good position, which means he has more opportunities to get chances like that. Unfortunately, he hasn't been finishing them at the rate he probably wants to. I'm sure he doesn't want to, and I'm sure fans would like him to. And so to watch him miss that sitter like that, God, that was heartbreaking.
Yes. So speaking of heartbreaking, I think this is a good opportunity to talk about Anthony Markanich, who is also no longer on the squad. City got $50,000 in 2024 GAM, the general allocation money, from Minnesota United in exchange for Markanich. Could acquire up to $100,000 in that GAM if certain performance-based incentives are achieved, and I think they'll get more percentage if Markanich ends up leaving the MLS. Also, a good deal. I think Markanich really played a good role for how long he was here and when he came in. We were really excited. You were one of his biggest supporters right off in the beginning, but then he didn't find his place, and I don't think the guy wants to be a defender.
I mean, I think he's completely fine with being a left back. I think it was a good deal overall. You brought him in.
That guy wants to be something else.
He's an attacking left back. He's an attacking left back. He's a fine defender. When he played center back, he showed that he has fine defensive instincts. He's playing in a system that asks players to get super far forward and leave a ton of space behind them, and then you have to recover. And so half of your game is literally built into it that you're playing recovery, and you're playing catch up, not actually playing proactive defense. It's not his fault, Moon. He's fine he's fine. It's not his fault. It's the scheme. Watch Jaden Reed play. The guy gets forward. Sometimes he's chasing. It's not his fault. But my point about Anthony Markanich is that the deal was solid. I mean, you brought him in last year for $50,000. There were some incentives tied to that. You get the most left back starts out of him in franchise history. According to Tom Timmerman, about 19 starts at left back is the most for any player right now in franchise history. And then you sell him for about that price, the same price with the ability to get a little bit more. That's a fine little deal. Essentially, you paid nil money plus his contract to cover the left back spot more commonly than any other player you've had in your roster. Not a terrible move. I did refer to the Markanich deal earlier when I said that sometimes there are trades that everyone's kind of happy with it. There's no bad feelings. This seems to be one of them. Tom Timmerman, reporting from St. Louis City's availability yesterday, tweeted out a couple comments that he had from John Hackworth. Here's a comment, and then I'll follow it up with a quote from Tom and Timmerman on X at Tom Tim. Hackworth said he met with Markanich, explained how he dropped on the depth chart through no fault of his own, the play of Jaden Reed, the signing of Horn. Asked what he wanted, and Markanich asked if there was a team that needed a left back. Club worked the deal with Minnesota. Markanich, here's Hackworth on Markanich, quote unquote. I'm sad that we traded him, but I'm also happy for Anthony. Hopefully it's a win-win for both of us, as long as we can kick their butt when we play them. Tom Timmerman making the note that City and Minnesota played twice in the last 9 games. So again, a good move for everyone around, and you heard it right there. You heard it right there, Moon. He wanted to make sure that there was any other team in the MLS that needed a left back, so he's fine with playing as defense.
Yeah, I understand that. The reason I think it was a heartbreak is because I think the dude is so talented, and maybe it was the scheme, but what the scheme did, or what we try to do with him, is split his personality, and to be an absolute
That's a wingback in
excellent.
2024, though, Moon. I mean, this is what wingbacks are required to do in the game of soccer/football day. You have to cover the entire. You have to play byline to byline, and you have to be as much a defender as you are an attacker. The problem is that requirement is put on both wingbacks who are playing with back four and in a back three/a back five. The difference is that unlike the guys who are playing in an odd man back line, Thomas Totland and at the time Anthony Markanich don't have the luxury of a third center back sitting behind them. And that's why they get exposed. This is a scheme issue, not a talent issue, because you're going to see the exact same issue with Jaden Reed and Horn, but it's because they have to push up and play on the offensive byline because those crosses from the left side are crucial to City creating.
Yeah, I agree with you that the scheme is what botched it. But what I think in his particular take, I think he could be a really, really, really good defender, and I think he gave him a little bit of a drug of going up there and taking some swipes. I disagree with you that the attacking is as important as the defending. I think when you're a defender, there is a heart, and the attacking aspect of it, and whatever you want to say the scheme is demanding of you, that's an attribute. And there are plenty of examples. I could go through every league, every major league with a left back especially that is a world-class left back, and no, they are not sacrificing defense or their ability to come back or chase or whatever it may be is not hindered by the fact that a scheme may demand more of them in an offensive role.
You literally just said you're talking about a world-class left back. We're talking about a guy who is just above MLS average. And again, I'm not saying that you're ignoring defense because of offense, but at the same time, those world-class left backs, none of them are staying back on defense and ignoring the offensive side of the game either. They are playing with a perfect balance of the two.
Yeah, I'm not talking about how he played with the balance of the two. I'm not talking about how he performed offensively or this or that. I'm saying that when he was being demanded, when he started doing better up front and they started scheming him more to go up front and to recover and all that kind of stuff, what I saw was a drop in his fundamental defensive skills when he was in the box, not when he was chasing or doing any of that kind of stuff. And what I'm saying is the heartbreak to me is I think we took a guy who could be trained to be an absolutely incredible defender because he is such a talented guy. And I think we split his personality now. And I don't know if you can do that unless you're world class out of high school or out of the teenage box or something.
What about
like
Akil Watts?
I still don't know if I even have a verbal opinion about.
They do the same thing. They do the same thing with Akil Watts, where essentially when he plays on the left side, he's a wingback, and he is playing. And if you look at just the heat map, the average positioning of these left backs are playing with an average positioning, Moon, of at midfield or on the offensive side of midfield. If you look at some of the average positionings of Akil Watts, I mean, his average spot is on the offensive side of midfield. At that point, we know what the more important part of his role is, do we not?
Listen, man, I'm not there to see what kind of coaching is going on. I just know that like young personalities can sometimes be overcoached as much as they can be undercoached, and I don't know what happened. All I know is the times that I really tried to zone in and watch him, especially when you were preaching about him and like we were watching and like he was getting some minutes and some starts and some stats. I feel like I watched, and maybe I'm wrong, man. I just feel like I watched his defensive IQ go down, and I thought, oh man, is this a situation where he doesn't want to be a defender, or he's got it so much in his mind to be this on the left side, or to be this in the midfield, or to be this in an attacking situation. I don't know. It just got me thinking, and I can't drop it. And maybe I'm totally wrong. Maybe I'm fixated on the wrong thing. But with him in particular, I was just like, oh man, what are they trying to make him? And if they're trying to make him a left back that covers all this ground, it's coming at a cost. And he's not on the team, so I must have been onto something.
Well, yeah,
But-
because they found guys who can cover the ground a little bit better.
Okay.
They're not. They're not. Jaden Reed's a super young player. I mean, this is a guy who was coming up from City 2. They're not asking him to cover less ground than they were asking Anthony Markanich. They're not asking him to split his personality any more or less than Anthony Markanich. They're asking him to do the exact same thing, which is, buddy, you got to play the full field. You're playing byline to byline. I don't care if the right wing on the other team is an absolute buster. You better also be giving us offense while covering your ass on that left side of flank. And so they're asking a ton of those players, but I respect that the team isn't changing their scheme based on they're identifying players that can play their style, and then they're saying, yes, this might be a position that is taxing, but we think you can do it, and so go out and do it. I respect an organization that says this is our scheme. We're getting players who can match the scheme. Our expectation is that they will then play up to that level. And I thought for a while they were getting that from Anthony Markanich. Again, I think the bigger issue with Markanich wasn't just that his defense. At times he was getting exposed. It's that when he was getting exposed, the consistency and the efficiency wasn't coming up on the offensive end, and that's where Jaden Reed, I think, even took him over. I don't think the difference in Jaden Reed and Anthony Markanich's game has been necessarily within a defensive game. I think Reed's been a little bit more consistent, but I don't think that's been where the big gap has been. The big gap has been is that while Markanich was good at progressing the ball from the defensive third through the middle third, maybe into the attacking third, Jaden Reed is able to take the ball and make plays happen out of nothing in the attacking third. He's able to dribble to 3 or 4 guys and then put a cross in that is extremely accurate and finds somebody most of the time in the box. The offensive side of the game, in my opinion, is actually what took Jaden Reed above Markanich in the depth chart.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I can understand that. Well, good luck.
Because I mean,
good luck to him. I like the kid.
The width is just so important for this team. I think we've seen. I think it's every time I watch this, it just gets driven to me more and more that how this team creates width is so important, and that's not rare for every soccer team. You have to create width. You have to create width. You have to attack through the channels, and you have to still have bodies in the middle that can draw defenders. I mean, those are like the 5 areas that you always have to think about horizontally across a soccer field. And so width is so important, and we know where City gets their width, and it's from most of the time their fullbacks, and that's why no matter how often we harp about it, I can't stop. I just wonder, are we going to see a shift now that they have the bodies on defense? Are we going to see more 5-man / 3-man back lines? I'm not sure, but after the conversation we just had, I very much would like it if there was a third center back behind these fullbacks, because man, they get exposed so often, and it's hard to watch sometimes.
Yeah, and I don't think it's just the scheme and just the positioning that's creating that exposure. I think it's a lack of understanding how to anticipate the 2, 3, 4 options that an offense or a midfield may have as soon as the opposition gets the ball. You should be thinking of, how can I ruin the next 2 to 3 possibilities that they're going to do? And hopefully we have a defense that really is working on that in training, because I've seen plenty of defensive coaches just work on individual defending and playing and your positioning and all that. But there's just so much more to it in the mind, in the air, and in the action that you're not seeing.
I think I'm going to have to ask Coach Hackworth now about how they do defensive coaching and how much if there is a chess level to the defensive coaching of thinking of coaching players to think 2 passes ahead of where the ball is right now, instead of just focusing on the man-to-man marking aspect or just the man-to-man defense aspect. That's a fascinating question, Moon.
I think there is.
I don't know. So I want to see what Coach Hackworth's answer is towards that question later this week.
I think there is, man. Like with strikers, I mean, it's so instinctual. It's so fast.
I just think it makes sense.
And I think with defense, it's so much chess, dude.
For me, my only issue with the question for you, it's like you're right. That's a legitimate question. It would just blow my mind if that isn't something that's second nature to defensive coaches. Because for me, when you just think about how soccer offense works and how you match up defending, it has so many similarities to if you're a big basketball or hockey fan, and just both of those sports focus so often on what happens 2 passes away from where the ball is right now. And so it would blow my mind if soccer coaches ignored that aspect of soccer, considering the extra pass and the moving off the ball, is it's like 75% of how we criticize good or bad offenses, and whether or not they make the extra pass and whether or not they move off the ball. So how our defense is not sitting there entirely game planning for what do we do with guys looking to make the extra pass, and what do we do with guys when they're moving off the ball, so that we're thinking about the second and third pass forward. It would blow my mind if that isn't something that that coaches are focusing on, but I believe you in this one that you've seen coaches not focus on that, and that would be a huge problem if they are ignoring that, so I got to find out.
I don't know. I think it's one of the most difficult things to teach.
That's fair.
It's one of the most difficult things to teach is the mind of a collective defense.
They get caught ball watching.
Dude, it's continuous.
I kind of want to give it up to you, Moon, because they get ball watching seems like it would be the most common mistake a team that doesn't focus on those things would make. And that, I think, is the most common mistake City makes. In fairness, I guess we could probably argue ball watching would probably be the most common mistake most soccer defenses make. So I don't want to, paint with a wide brush here, but I think I see where you're going with this, Moon.
There would be no ball watching if you had really, really high IQ or well-trained defenders.
That's
because
true.
you're 2 steps ahead. You know what I mean? And every time I'm watching those kind of simple mistakes, I feel it is the most gut-wrenching thing. It's far worse to me to watch. And again, I was a defender, and I love that aspect of the game. I love the unsung heroes, the brilliant defenders that you don't even realize are brilliant defenders, and that's what makes them brilliant defenders. I love that stuff, and those kind of simple mistakes are what hurts my heart. My physical heart hurts when I watch games like that, much more so than a skied ball or a crossbar or something like that on the other end. It's devastating. And you know what it does? It takes us from winning the West to being 13th in the West. And we're not all that far behind. Points wise we are. But if you look at just goal to goal to goal and mistake to mistake, we're unfortunately, like I said, we're not making one mistake that's equaling one goal. We're making like 7 mistakes that's equaling one goal because we have a goalie that's rescued us 100 times, because it's the MLS and a lot of these guys are missing. But dude, we're 30 basic mistakes from top 8 in the West.
Well, it's going to be tough with all the away games and obviously a short run here in the stretch run. One more kind of negative story from the transfer window. Obviously, the deadline has passed. For a little bit of information, by the way, tomorrow on Thursday, Lutz Pfannenstiel and Diego Gigliani will sit down for a press conference with the media to talk all about the transfer window. One other big story from the transfer window that doesn't directly involve City that a lot of people reacted to, Moon, including you sending me a text over this, was Nicolas Gioacchini is back in the MLS. But for FC Cincinnati, as he has been loaned from new Serie A side Como to FC Cincinnati. Como continues to add new attacking players. They need Serie A level players, and Niko Gioacchini back now in the MLS for a rival of St. Louis City SC. I know a lot of fans who had been following Niko's journey to Italy were very unhappy when that news came out.
Yeah, my buddy sent that to me. He saw it before I did, and he was bummed. Not bummed that he was back in the MLS, bummed that he's playing for freaking Cincinnati.
Fans were really affected. Like there was a couple people I know who had followed Como this entire Serie B season and unfollowed them and were very angry that Como would loan Niko out. And I was surprised by the visceral reaction from so many City fans to a loan move from a Serie B team, or a Serie A team, I should say.
I get it, man. We're still fresh, and because he was so beloved, and we sent him somewhere where there was no threat. All of us were cheering him on, and now we can't cheer him on. And it was actually fun to chear him on from the other side of the water.
The Niko Gioacchini revisionist history continues. Okay, sure.
What? What do you mean?
I think people criticized the living daylights out of that guy last year. And then after the fact, everyone sat there and said, well, he had double-digit goals. He had 10 goals, and then they transferred him. And everyone's like, why are we transferring one of our best players? Niko was the heart of St. Louis. Again, I like Niko a lot. I just think that there were a lot of people who complained about his finishing. There was a lot of people who complained about his usage. There was a lot of people who complained about the time he spent on the ground. And
that was excessive.
In my point. And that wasn't my opinion. I don't really care about that stuff. But still, it's just like I feel like people like immediately started myth-making about Niko Gioacchini as soon as City transferred him. And listen, that's people are always going to do that. We've seen it with a bunch of the few players that City's gotten rid of. I think it's funny. I just thought the reaction was interesting that people cared this much about a guy coming back to the MLS. Obviously, I know there was a little bit of everything with FC Cincinnati last year with the supporter shield or whatever the hell it's called.
Rocc, you gotta expect it, dude.
I know.
We were so spoiled.
I know.
We were so spoiled last year.
I guess this is part of this is also in that I saw a lot of people just like angry about all the moves and people like mad that so many players got sold and things like that.
Well,
it's just like this is soccer, baby. This you thought transactions in other sports were fun. Hold on to your horses. There's 500 leagues around the world, and every one of them's wheeling and dealing players throughout the year. So hold on to your buckles. Don't get attached to many players because there's a good chance one of them's going to get sold for $1 million.
Yeah, you know what? That's a great thing, and you should say that before every single episode because there's a lot of new, especially a lot of new St. Louis soccer fans that are what baseball fans. You know, they're sports fans through baseball, through the Cardinals, and if they're new to soccer,
they should understand this. I think baseball fans should understand this. Moon, all the summer transfer window it's just the trade deadline. It's a little bit different, but it's just the trade deadline. What's so confusing?
Except for, like you just mentioned, there's 100 of top-class soccer leagues. There's like 3 in baseball, and Americans only know 1.
Yeah, because the problem is that when the Cardinals trade for a player, it's like, oh, I've heard of him. The Cardinals played him. City transfers a player, and it's like, who the hell is Hannes Horn? What has Marcel Hartl done? What team has he played for? Because people in St. Louis don't know second Bundesliga stats, nor should they have to.
Yeah, there's a much bigger box to find and send players to. In fact, there's 150 large boxes.
I get that. So I get why fans have a tougher time. I'm just saying, strap in. This is what it is. There's random tournaments that buttress into the middle of the transfer window because the MLS sucks. There's going to be players who just can't play games because they're off with their national team. It's called a national break. You ever heard of an MLS? So it's weird. It's goofy. And, strap in and come along for the ride. It's fun. There's twists and turns. There's loop-de-loops. And we all scream and throw our hands up.
You're right. But we were spoiled last year, and people are going to complain, especially we were spoiled, and then we were a disaster this year. So, of course, everybody's missing what we had last year. Let's end on some good news rolling into the next MLS match, which happens this Saturday on the 24th. This is from Matt Baker. We know Matt Baker is a great follow on Twitter. This dude, I'm just going to read his tweet. It says, good news, everybody. Everybody is present and accounted for at training. Teuscher, Alm, Klaus, Nielsen, Durkin all trained with the team early, then split off to run sprints and laps. Teuscher was shown precaution, but Hackworth said he's good, should be full by tomorrow. Klaus, Alm, Nielsen are in return to play protocol. Hack noted that anything we do to mitigate re-injury, specifically to Nielsen, and Chris Durkin was actually injured versus Portland, took a, quote, pretty good knock on a play. Not called as a foul. Hack noted Durkin is, quote, the toughest on the field and was surprised it wasn't called during the game. Being cautious, but says that he should be available Saturday.
Yep, everything makes sense there. I do want to throw in a couple quick notes, which is I'm very positive. I like that Klaus and Alm are on their way back. I do think it's odd that they were both supposed to be 6 to 8 week injuries, and we are well past either of these 6 to 8 week windows for either of those players. So it's a little worrisome to me that, again, we've had another set of City injuries that have taken longer, significantly longer, 50% longer than the originally announced timeline. But Klaus and Alm are on their way back. That's positive. Obviously, if the words there from Coach Hackworth that Matt had out on X kind of jumped out to you. Remember how sad Hackworth was, kind of disappointed in them pushing Nielsen and him getting hurt again. So I really do think we're going to see a lot of caution with Joachim Nielsen coming back, which makes me think there's a very good chance we probably see one of the new addition of Kessler get the start this weekend. I would guess maybe alongside Hebert, though I do think with the way that Yaro's been playing lately, which has been a positive sign, we could see him get the start. Maybe they go with Hebert instead of either Horn or Reed. I'm not sure. I just really think Kessler's getting the start on Saturday.
It's going to be exciting. I'm really excited to see the starting 11, dude. I really am. And I would not be surprised if we didn't see Klaus in later minutes, depending on how the match is going.
Not this game.
You don't think so?
I think Klaus and Alm are still one more week before we start seeing them actually get time on the field. If he was going to get even 20 minutes on the pitch today, he would have been in the regular sessions with everybody later in practice. But the fact that Klaus and Alm are still splitting off from the rest of practice for a specific return to play workouts tells me that both Klaus and Alm are still a week, if not 2 weeks away from the ramp up time, and which again, it tells you that I'm not sure why the timeline was 6 to 8 weeks, because I think by the time Klaus gets to 90 minutes healthy, but maybe 3 weeks from now, he'll be at 12 weeks, and I think Alm is at 10 or 11 right now. Tom Timmerman did a great job breaking down these timelines in his STL Today story right now. So I'm just wondering why this has become a consistent thing. The only reason my alarm bells is going off is because it's kind of become a thing with the Cardinals. More of like a passive joke that we're just like, oh yeah, Cardinals say he's out for 5 to 10 weeks. We'll see him in 15. So it's just a weird thing around some of the St. Louis sports that we now kind of have this weird thing with the injuries. I don't know what it is, but it keeps weirding me out. But like I said, I hope Toy Shirt and Durkin are all good for Saturday, and hopefully we do see Joachim Nielsen soon. But again, I really do think be as cautious as possible. We saw Portland during the Leagues Cup. Obviously, nothing is going to be the same that it was in that Leagues Cup game. Nonetheless, you looked good against Portland, and I think there's no reason to push Joachim Nielsen. Get the new guy out there, surround him with other solid players like Hebert, Reed, Totland, and you can go out there and win this game 2-1.
Oh man, yeah, you're probably right. I think if there's a 2-goal difference, psychologically speaking, I would put Klaus in the 85th. If there's a 2-goal difference, one way or the other, he's got to get. You know him, dude.
I'll just give you a little insight here because Tom Timmerman did a great job breaking this down. Please, like I said, go and read Tom Timmerman's piece. In there, he specifically has quotes from Klaus and Alm where they talk about how running isn't the issue right now. Passing, cutting, shooting the ball is where they're still feeling pain. And so, if that's what they're saying to Tom Timmerman, no, I do not want them out on the field this weekend.
Okay, yeah, I did not read that piece yet.
Yes.
So
yeah, it's still they're still feeling pain in movements that aren't just running. So yeah, they're still a couple weeks away from really, I think, even that like 20-minute sub spot. But hey, you have the attack set right now. You have your starting 4 in Toy Shirt, Hartle, Bescher, and Thoresen. Eventually, you get those guys. You get Alm replacing Thor off the bench. You get Klaus replacing Bescher off the bench, and eventually, hopefully, those guys get back to 100% health. And maybe the last 3 or 4 games of the year, you're 100% healthy, and you're going out there with a 4-man attack of Hartle, Toy Shirt, Alm, and Klaus, and then you still have Nukvi and Bescher to come off the bench in the 70th minute. That's how they get to the playoffs, is by an offense that can maybe take a 1-0 lead in the first half, but the crucial part is going to be having those killers in the 80th minute that can get them wins instead of draws, because that's going to be the big thing. If they make the playoffs, Hackworth already said they're probably going to have to win 7 out of 9. And I think if you win 7 out of 9 games, my guess is at least 4 or 5 of those games are probably going to be 1-1 games at one point where you got to leg out a goal late in the game to win that one 2-1. And how you're going to do that is going to be late in games using your depth. And I really hope that's how we see it happen.
Yeah, man. Honestly, other than 1 or 2 matches that I see being pretty dang difficult in the next month and a half, this is totally doable. But like you said, with some health, if the offense is just driving, if we see some real drive from them and some real flattening of the opposition chances from the defense, I think we can do it. The schedule
LAFC is the one I'm scaredest about. I'll just say,
me too.
Go through the whole schedule, because that's the big one that I really think that, again, you got to win 7 out of 9. I'm okay with chalking up LAFC as an L right now. Let's go find the 7 out of 8 somewhere else.
I agree, but LAFC is not until October 2nd,
Yes.
meaning we're going to pack in 6 games before that. If
And
we
maybe
can get
everybody's healthy.
results, if we can get some results and some real drive through those 6 games, I'm actually not worried about that LAFC game one way or the other. So here's how it rolls. Portland this Saturday. Now, the bad news for that is it's on the West Coast.
A lot
for
of away
Portland.
Games.
Meaning it's a 9:30. And if you've seen our away record, it's not pretty. It is not pretty. September 1st, though, LA. I think the Galaxy here at home, if we're coming off of a good result this week,
we can't mince
Galaxy's
words. We can't mince words, Moon. That is you have to win that game just because it's one of the few home games you get.
It is. So then we're away again to the Revolution. We discussed the Revolution is total freaking garbage. If we don't get 3 points there, we should just end the season September 7th. Pardon me. Then we go up to actually we're back home at City Park against Minnesota.
Gotta
then
be
it's
another
away.
W. Gotta be another W.
Yep. Then it's away on the 21st to San Jose again. Another 9:30 start here, and then Kansas City back at City Park on the 28th. Then that LAFC match that we're talking about, that's in LA, so that's going to be a difficult one. That starts off October on the 2nd. Then on the 5th, midweek against Houston, City Park here home, and then on the 19th we close it out with Minnesota United in Minnesota. Doable, but we got to see drive from the offense, flattening from the defense.
Yeah,
come on, boys.
And the tricky part is going to be because, again, I do think, like you're right, Portland, LA Galaxy, New England Revolution, Minnesota FC, San Jose. The first 5 games in this 9-game run are very winnable. If you can win, the problem is, see, this is why the 7 out of 9 thing's so tricky, because here, I'm about to get to it. You got to win 4 out of 5 of those, and it still only gives us 1 other loss. And then you have Kansas City, LAFC, in Houston, and that all happens in a 1-week span. You have Kansas City on the 20th of September, then you get LAFC 5 days later on Wednesday, and then you're right back at it with Houston on the weekend. So the fact that LAFC game's the middle game in a 2-8 or 3-8, excuse me, that's also really sucky. And so the margin for error is so small that right off the bat, 4 out of 5 of these first ones is the first thing you got to circle. And so, and honestly, if we're really being realistic, considering you can't, I don't know how you can be confident in a W in a midweek game against LAFC at this point. That's going to be one of the L's. I don't know how are you really confident in City? I know we don't know how they're going to look a month from now, but just right now we're looking at City. Are you confident?
Anything could happen.
Are you confident they can get 2 out of 3 wins against Kansas City and Houston when they're also playing LAFC middle? It's just it's a tough schedule, and as we break it down now, it's doable because after Houston, you then end the season again against Minnesota FC. That's a winnable game still, just like it is when you host them a few weeks earlier. So it's possible. It's possible. But I really do think if we're sitting here in 3 weeks and we're talking about a draw or even, God forbid, a loss from any of these first 5 games, then we're talking about a team that isn't going to the playoffs.
Yeah, but anything can happen. A, it's a beautiful game, and B, we're playing with a totally different team. Maybe not, every single name replaced, but this is a completely different team that's going to work completely differently.
We know the offense is different. The question is the defense different?
Hey, all it has to be is a little different.
Okay.
That's what I've been preaching.
So
just has to be a little different.
So 30 mistakes, and they've played with Leagues Cup and CONCACAF. They've played around 30 games. So all Moon's saying is just 1 less mistake per game. That's not a lot. That's not hard.
You know what? If we just here's what I'll say. If our defense for the rest of the season only lets in good goals, we'll be in the playoffs.
Okay.
If you just tighten up the mistakes,
there it is.
We have the talent on the field that will make the playoffs. We will. You just have to tighten up the mistakes because, again, it's not one mistake costing us 1 goal. It's a half a dozen really simple mistakes, and finally they'll get one in because we are working with a world-class goalie, and we have a midfield that's starting to hold the ball a little bit better. Our possession numbers, I don't know where they are, but they feel a little bit better. Even against Club America, I think we had 45% possession, and that team is much better than us. So we just got to make fewer simple mistakes in the backfield. And And I think we're going to be okay. Anything can happen. It's the beautiful game, and anything can happen in a month with a completely different team.
Your lips to God's ears, Moon.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's wrap it up right there. Again, 9:30 this Saturday, local time. We'll be taking on the Portland Timbers. Every game, by the way, is on MLS Season Pass, and the LA game, the Galaxy game on the 1st that takes place here at City Park, will also be broadcast on Fox. If you are interested in that, we'll keep you updated in between every match week and match days. So I think with that, let's just go back to the old classic. Rocchio, what do you think?
Yeah, let's score some goals.